Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we re-diving deep into one of the most explosive and world-changing events in history, the French Revolution. Forget the dusty textbooks for a second. This isn't just a story about angry peasants and a queen who may or may not have said, "Let them eat cake." This is the story of how an entire nation turned itself upside down, and in doing so, created the blueprint for modern politics, human rights, and the very idea of what a country could be. It's a tale of radical ideas, incredible courage, and terrifying violence that reshaped our world. So grab a seat and let's travel back to late 18th century France. To really get what happened, we need to understand what France was like before the storm. Imagine a society structured like a pyramid, known as the Ancien Regime or Old Regime. At the very top, you had King Louis XVI, an absolute monarch who ruled by divine right. Below him were the three estates. The first estate was the clergy, the priests, bishops, and cardinals of the Catholic Church. They owned about 10% of the land and paid virtually no taxes. The second estate was the nobility, the titled aristocrats with ancient lineages. They also owned a huge chunk of the land, held all the top jobs in the government and military, and you guessed it, were exempt from most taxes. And then there was everyone else, the third estate. This wasn't just a small group. It was 97% of the French population. It included everyone from wealthy merchants and lawyers, known as the bourgeoisie, to urban workers, artisans, and the vast majority of the population, the peasants toiling in the countryside. Despite making up almost the entire nation and producing most of its wealth, the third estate had almost no political power and shouldered nearly the entire tax burden. Think about that for a second. The poorest people were paying for the lavish lifestyles of the richest. It was a system boiling with inequality. Now, add a few more ingredients to this explosive mix. First, the Enlightenment. Philosophers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Montesquieu were spreading radical new ideas across Europe. They questioned the divine right of kings, championed liberty, equality, and the rights of the individual. They argued that governments should exist to serve the people, not the other way around. These ideas were being discussed in coffee houses and salons across Paris, firing up the minds of the educated bourgeoisie in the Third Estate. They started to think, why should we be ruled by a system that's so obviously unfair? The second ingredient was an economic crisis. France was broke. Decades of extravagant spending by the monarchy, including funding the American Revolution, ironic, right? Had plunged the country into massive debt. To make matters worse, a series of bad harvests in the 1780s led to a shortage of grain. This caused the price of bread, the staple food for most French people, to skyrocket. People were literally starving in the streets, while the king and queen were living in the mind-boggling luxury of the Palace of Versailles. The anger was palpable. People weren't just poor. They were hungry, and they saw the injustice of it all right in front of them. Facing bankruptcy, King Louis XVI finally decided he had to do something. His plan? Tax the nobility. Of course, the nobles weren't having any of it. In a last-ditch effort, the king called a meeting of the Estates General in 1789, an assembly of representatives from all three estates. This was a big deal. It hadn't met in 175 years. But the old rules were still in place. Each estate got one vote. So the clergy and the nobility, the first and second estates, could always outvote the third estate 2-1. The representatives of the third estate realized this was a rigged game. They were there to represent 97% of the people, and they demanded a fairer system where votes were counted by head, not by estate. When the king refused, the third estate made a history-defining move. On June 20th, 1789, they gathered at a nearby indoor tennis court and took what became known as the Tennis Court Oath. They declared themselves the National Assembly, the true representatives of the French people, and swore an oath not to disband until they had written a new constitution for France. This was an open act of rebellion. They were basically saying, "We are the government now." The revolution had officially begun. News of this defiance spread like wildfire through Paris. The people were energized, but also fearful that the king would use his army to crush the new National Assembly. The tension finally snapped on July 14, 1789. A massive crowd of Parisians, searching for weapons and gunpowder to defend themselves, marched on the Bastille, a medieval fortress used as a state prison. To the people, the Bastille was a terrifying symbol of the king's absolute and arbitrary power. After a bloody battle, the crowd stormed the fortress, took it apart brick by brick, and paraded the governor's head on a pike through the streets. The storming of the Bastille was more than just a riot. It was a symbolic victory that showed the people could defeat the king's authority. In the wake of this, the National Assembly moved quickly. In August 1789, they issued one of the most important documents in human history, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. Inspired by the American Declaration of Independence and Enlightenment philosophy, it declared that men are born and remain free and equal in rights. It proclaimed liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression as fundamental human rights. This was revolutionary. It completely dismantled the old system of privilege and hierarchy and established the principle of equality before the law for all citizens. But the king was still at Versailles, and the people of Paris were still hungry. In October, a crowd of thousands of women, furious over the price of bread, marched the 12 miles from Paris to Versailles. They stormed the palace, demanding that the king and his family move to Paris, where the people could keep an eye on them. The king had no choice but to agree. The royal family became, for all intents and purposes, prisoners of the revolution in the heart of Paris. Power had decisively shifted from the monarch to the people. The next couple of years were a period of radical reform. The National Assembly seized church lands to pay off the national debt, reorganized the country into new administrative districts, and worked on their constitution, which established a limited constitutional monarchy. But not everyone was happy. The king, feeling like a prisoner, tried to escape France with his family in June 1791. They were caught near the border and brought back to Paris in disgrace. This escape attempt destroyed what little trust the people had left in him. To many, it proved he was a traitor working against the revolution. This is when things started to get even more intense and radical. Other European monarchies, terrified that revolutionary ideas would spread to their own countries, began threatening France. In response, France declared war on Austria and Prussia in 1792. This war, combined with the deep internal divisions and paranoia, pushed the revolution into its most extreme phase, the Reign of Terror. A new, more radical government, the National Convention, abolished the monarchy and declared France a republic. In January 1793, they put citizen Louis Capet, the former King Louis XVI, on trial for treason. He was found guilty and executed by the new efficient killing machine of the revolution, the guillotine. The execution of the king sent shockwaves across Europe and pushed France into a state of emergency. The government was taken over by a small group of radicals called the Committee of Public Safety, led by the formidable and uncompromising Maximilien Robespierre. Robespierre believed that the Republic could only be saved through terror. He argued that terror was a form of swift and severe justice, necessary to eliminate the enemies of the revolution. What followed was a dark and bloody period. Special courts were set up, and anyone suspected of being an enemy of the revolution, from royalists and aristocrats to moderate revolutionaries, and even people who just weren't enthusiastic enough, could be arrested and sent to the guillotine with little or no trial. Over the next year, tens of thousands of people were executed across France. It was a time of extreme paranoia where no one felt safe. But terror, by its nature, consumes itself. Robespierre became increasingly powerful and paranoid, executing even his former revolutionary allies. Fearing they would be next, his opponents in the National Convention finally turned against him. In July 1794, Robespierre himself was arrested and sent to the guillotine, ending the Reign of Terror. After the chaos of the Terror, France longed for stability. A new, more moderate government, called the Directory, took over, but it was weak, corrupt, and ineffective. The country was still at war, and the economy was in shambles. People were tired of the constant political turmoil. They were looking for a strong leader to restore order. And that's when a brilliant and ambitious young general, who had made a name for himself defending the Republic in battle, saw his opportunity. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. In 1799, Napoleon staged a coup d'etat, overthrowing the Directory and seizing power for himself. He would eventually crown himself Emperor of the French, and in many ways, this marked the end of the French Revolution. It's ironic, isn't it? A revolution that began to overthrow an absolute monarch ended with a military dictator taking absolute power. So, what is the legacy of this decade of chaos, hope, and bloodshed? It's immense. The French Revolution permanently destroyed the old feudal order in France. It championed the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, which have inspired countless movements for freedom and democracy around the globe ever since. It introduced the concept of modern nationalism, the idea that a nation is not its king, but its people. The legal and administrative reforms, like the Napoleonic Code, would influence legal systems across the world. But it also served as a chilling warning about how the pursuit of a perfect society can lead to tyranny and terror. The French Revolution is a complex, messy, and fascinating story that is still very much alive in the world we live in today. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through one of history's most pivotal moments. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history. Let me know in the comments what part of the French Revolution you find most fascinating. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.